10 years, a handwritten recipe book, and a man I trusted completely. I want to tell you something about trust before I tell you anything else. Real trust, the kind that builds. Over a decade of early mornings and long services and shared exhaustion in a kitchen at 11 at night is not naive. It is earned. It is constructed, slowly, from hundreds of small consistent moments that add up to a conviction. I was not foolish for trusting Marco. I was paying attention to the wrong evidence. My name is Concetta. I am 73 years old. I have run a restaurant called La Tovola on the corner of Breslin and 4th for 31 years. It is not a large restaurant. 14 tables, a bar that seats 8, a kitchen the size of a generous living room, and a menu that has changed very little since. I opened because the food is right and I see no reason to fix what is not broken. Marco came to work for me when he was 24 years old. He was eager and capable and, within the first year, clearly gifted in the way that some people simply are in a kitchen. He had instinct. He understood balance. He could taste a sauce at the halfway point and tell you what it needed in 3 words. I recognized it immediately because I had spent 31 years developing the same skill myself, and I know what it looks like in someone else. Grandma always said, talent is common, loyalty is rare. Never confuse one for the other. I taught him everything. That is not a figure of speech. I taught him my braised short rib recipe, which took me 11 years to perfect, and which uses a reduction method that I developed by accident in 1998 and have never written down anywhere a stranger could find it. I taught him my grandmother's pasta dough, the specific ratio and the resting time and the particular way you fold it that changes the texture in a way that cannot be described, only demonstrated. I taught him the Sunday gravy that my mother made, that her mother made before her, and that carries, as far as I am concerned, the weight of everyone who ever stood at that stove. I taught him because I trusted him, because he had worked beside me for a decade, because I was 63 years old and I was beginning to think about the future of the restaurant and what it would look like if I needed to step back. Because when you build something with your hands for 30 years and you find someone who loves it the way you love it, you open the door. He walked through it, and then he took everything he had seen and walked across the street. Marco resigned on a Tuesday in March. He was professional about it. 2 weeks' notice, a handshake, a speech about wanting to pursue his own vision. I was hurt, but I understood. Chefs leave. It is the nature of the industry. I wished him well. I meant it. I told my sous chef Patrizia that we would manage the transition and that we had done it before and we would do it again. For months later, a restaurant called Marco's Table opened directly across the street from La Tovola. I found out from a customer who mentioned it in passing. The way you mention something, you assume the other person already knows the menu across the street and what it told me. Patrizia brought me the menu on a Friday afternoon. She had gone over herself, she said, because she wanted to see it before I did and decide how to tell me. She set it on my desk in the back office and stood beside me while I read it. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The braised short rib, the pasta dough, the Sunday gravy listed under a different name but described in terms so specific that I could hear my own voice in the wording. The wine-poached pears that I had developed the previous autumn after 3 weeks of testing that my whole kitchen had participated in, dish after dish, with minor variations in presentation and naming that did nothing to obscure what they were. They were my recipes, served in a room I did not own by a man I had trained across the street from the restaurant that had made them. The customers began shifting within the first month. Not all of them, not even most of them at first, but enough The kind of regulars who had been coming to Lotovola for years started appearing less frequently, and when I asked, gently, the ones who were honest told me they had tried Marco's table, and that the food was good and it was something new. I smiled and said I was glad they had enjoyed it, and went back to my kitchen and stood at the stove for a long time without cooking anything. Grandma always said, "The knife that hurts most is the one sharpened in your own kitchen." By month 3, the covers were down 20%. By month 4, closer to 30. Patrizia did not mention the numbers to me because she knew I was already watching them. I began having a conversation with myself about whether 31 years was enough, whether this was simply the market moving, whether I was being sentimental about food that a younger chef had now made his own. I entertained that conversation for approximately 6 weeks. Then I stopped entertaining it because it was not honest. The food was not his. The recipes were not his. The decade of refinement that had made those dishes what they were had happened in my kitchen, at my stove, under my instruction, and in most cases with my own hands. What Marco had was not vision. What Marco had was a very good memory and no conscience. I called my attorney. Her name is Frances, and she has handled my business matters for 19 years. And when I described the situation, she was quiet for a moment and then said, "Concetta, before we talk about the recipes, I need to ask you something. Do you happen to know who owns the building Marco is operating from?" I stopped. I thought about it, and then I sat down very slowly in my office chair, because I did know. I had known for 20 years and I had simply not connected the information to this moment. The building across the street, the one with the green awning and the chalkboard menu, and my recipes in the window, was a property I had purchased in 2004 as an investment. I had purchased it through a property management company that handled the leasing and maintenance, so I would not have to think about it. I had not thought about it until Frances asked. The lease, the phone call, and the power of a paper trail. I called my property manager, a methodical man named Gerald who had managed the building for 18 years and whom I had spoken to perhaps 4 times in that period. He confirmed what I already suspected. Marco's table was a tenant in my building, operating on a standard commercial lease that had been signed 8 months prior. Just before Marco resigned from Lotovola, the lease was due for renewal in 6 months. Gerald asked me what I would like to do. I told him I would not be renewing it. Grandma always said, patience is not weakness. It is knowing that the right moment is coming and being ready when it arrives. Frances had already begun the trade secret case before I called Gerald. Under our state's trade secret statutes, a recipe can qualify for legal protection when it meets certain criteria. It must derive independent economic value from not being generally known, and reasonable steps must have been taken to maintain its secrecy. My recipes were not published. They were not shared outside the kitchen. New employees signed a confidentiality agreement as a condition of employment, a practice I had maintained for 20 years after a brief and unpleasant experience with a former line cook in 2001. Marco had signed that agreement in 2013 on his 3rd day of employment in my office with Frances's standard language about proprietary recipes, kitchen methods, and supplier relationships. Frances had a copy, I had a copy, and Marco, it turned out, had apparently forgotten entirely that it existed. The complaint was filed in the 4th month after Marco's table opened. It alleged misappropriation of trade secrets, breach of the confidentiality agreement, and unfair business competition. Frances attached the signed agreement, a side-by-side menu comparison with detailed notes on the specific elements that matched my documented recipes, and sworn statements from Patrizia and 2 other long-term kitchen staff who could testify to the origin and development of each dish in question. Marco's attorney argued that the recipes were general culinary techniques not subject to protection, that braised short rib and Sunday gravy were common dishes made across thousands of restaurants, and that any similarities were coincidental. Francis submitted, in response, my handwritten development notes from 1998 onward, including the dated pages, where I had documented the specific reduction method, the exact ratio adjustments, and the mistake that had led to the discovery that became the signature of the dish. 30 years of obsessive note-keeping. I had not known, when I started, that I was building a legal case. I had simply been a cook who believed that good food deserved to be remembered accurately. The notice, the silence, and the 6-month countdown. Gerald sent the non-renewal notice by certified mail on a Wednesday. Standard commercial property. Procedure delivered within the legally required window, citing the landlord's election not to extend the lease term. There was no personal note. There was no explanation beyond what the law required. It was a document. Clean, formal, and completely devastating to the person who received it. Marco called me 2 days later. I had not spoken to him since his resignation dinner, which I had paid for because that is the kind of person I am. Or at least the kind of person I was still trying to be at the time. He called my mobile. I recognized the number and let it ring. He called twice more over the following week. I did not answer. Francis had advised me not to engage in direct communication while litigation was active, and I was grateful for the instruction because I was not certain I could have the conversation without saying things that were true but unhelpful. Grandma always said, silence, used correctly, is the loudest thing in any room. The trade secret case moved through preliminary proceedings over the following months. Marco's restaurant continued operating, though I noticed from my front window that the chalkboard menu had begun changing, dishes disappearing and being replaced with items that did not appear on my menu. He was adjusting, pulling back the most obvious duplications now that the lawsuit had been filed. It was, Francis noted, a tacit acknowledgement that the similarities had been intentional. The lease expired on the last day of September. Marco's table had been open for 11 months. Gerald had made clear, through the formal process, that the space would need to be vacated by the close of business on that date. Marco applied for an emergency injunction to delay the eviction, arguing that the non-renewal was retaliatory. The judge reviewed the timeline. The lease had a standard non-renewal clause. The landlord had exercised it within the permitted window. The injunction was denied in 4 days. On the 1st of October, Marco's table was closed. The green awning came down on a Tuesday morning. I watched from my window while I had my coffee. Patricia came into the office and stood beside me. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then she said, "The short rib is back on special tonight." I told her to make extra. She went back to the kitchen. I finished my coffee, and then I went to work. The customers who had drifted across the street began returning within the first 2 weeks of Marco's closure, not all at once, gradually. The way trust rebuilds, which is slower than the way it breaks but more durable once it settles. By November, the covers were back to where they had been. By December, we had a waiting list on weekends for the first time in over a year. The judgment, the bankruptcy, and what $100,000 means. The trade secret trial was 7 months after Marco's restaurant closed. He was, by that point, no longer operating a business, no longer employed in a kitchen as far as Francis could determine, and represented by his third attorney of the proceedings. The case had been well documented from the beginning, and the evidence had not improved for him with time. The confidentiality agreement was central. Francis walked the court through each clause, each dish, each dated entry in my development notebooks. She presented testimony from Patrizia and from a culinary expert who had reviewed both menus and the recipe documentation and concluded with professional specificity that the probability of independent development of the identical reduction method described in my 1998 notes was effectively zero. Marco's third attorney made a valiant effort. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Grandma always said, "A lie built on borrowed foundations always falls when the ground is examined closely enough." The judgment was for $100,000. It covered lost revenue during the period of competition, damages for the misappropriation, and legal costs. Francis called me from the courthouse steps and read the number to me over the phone. I wrote it in my notebook, the same one I had been writing in since 1998, and I dated the entry, and I went back to the kitchen. Marco filed for personal bankruptcy protection 3 months after the judgment. The $400,000 debt was listed as a primary creditor obligation. Bankruptcy protection does not, as a general rule, discharge debts arising from intentional misconduct, and Francis had ensured the judgment language reflected the intentional nature of the misappropriation. The debt followed him. He has not, to my knowledge, opened another restaurant. Francis's contacts in the industry suggest he attempted to find kitchen employment at 2 establishments in the following year, and that both offers were withdrawn after due diligence. The culinary world in this city is not large. People know what happened. A signed confidentiality agreement, a filed lawsuit, and a published judgment are not private documents. He cooked in my kitchen for 10 years. He learned everything I knew, and in the end, the thing that undid him was a piece of paper he had signed on his 3rd day and forgotten about entirely. I had not forgotten about it. I never forget paperwork. Lotovola, the green awning, and what 31 years builds. The building across the street has a new tenant now, a florist. She took the space 6 months after Marco vacated. Painted over the green awning in a deep terracotta that I think suits the street better, and fills her window with arrangements that change every week. She waves to me sometimes in the morning. I wave back. It is a good use of the building. I still own it, of course. Gerald manages it with the same efficiency he has applied for 20 years. I think about it more than I used to, which I consider a reasonable adjustment to have made. You learn things from the moments that almost break you, if you pay attention. Grandma always said, what you build over decades cannot be stolen in a season. It can be disrupted. It can be shaken. But the foundation is yours, and foundations do not move. Patrizia is still with me. She has been with Lotovola for 16 years now, and she runs the kitchen on the nights I take off, which has become more frequent as I have allowed myself to believe that the restaurant does not require my physical presence every hour to remain itself. That was a harder lesson than the Marco situation in some ways. Letting go of control is its own kind of trust. The development notebooks are in a locked cabinet in my office. There are 11 of them now, running from 1993 to the present. Frances has copies of the relevant sections held in her files as a precaution. I do not consider this paranoia. I consider it basic professional maintenance, the same way one maintain the kitchen equipment and the customer records and the lease agreements on the properties I own. You take care of the things that matter. People ask me sometimes whether I bear Marco any lasting ill will. It is a question I find genuinely interesting because the honest answer is no, and I think people expect yes. What I feel toward him is something closer to a professional disappointment, the kind you feel when someone with real talent makes choices that ensure they will never reach what they were capable of. He was good. He could have been excellent. He chose a shorter road, and it led exactly where short roads lead. The Sunday gravy is still on the menu. It will be on the menu as long as Lotovola is open. My grandmother made it. Her grandmother made it before her. No judgment, no bankruptcy filing. No act of professional betrayal changes what that dish is or where it comes from. Grandma always said, some things cannot be stolen because they are not located in any recipe. They are located in the people who made them, and that address does not change. Thank you for watching. If this story found you today, I hope it reminded you to protect what you build. Document your work, know your agreements, and never, under any circumstances, forget who owns the building. Leave a comment if this reached you. Share it with someone who needs it. And if you are ever on the corner of Breslin and 4th on a Friday evening, the short rib is always worth the wait.